We release a video every year to alert you of potential food shortages and crises for the upcoming year. However, this year, I want to take a different approach. Instead of just forecasting the following year, which often comes with ample forewarning, I want to address potential food crisis and threats we're going to face over the rest of this decade, and more importantly, what you can do today to mitigate these inevitable events. In this video, I'll continue to discuss our current threats and why they will unfortunately worsen, but I aim to provide a broader perspective on our food supply and to hopefully give you practical tools to implement solutions. Now, near the end of this video, I'm going to outline 5 actionable steps that you can take today to mitigate the looming food crisis in our future. So definitely stick around for that. Download the Start Preparing Survival Guide to help you prepare for any disaster. I'll post a link in the description and comments section below, or visit cityprepping.com/get started for a free guide to help you get started on your journey of preparedness. 5 current threats. When I hear of extreme weather worldwide that increasingly impacts our daily lives, I always consider the main agricultural exports in their destination markets. Now, we analyzed this with olives and olive oil across Europe and predicted rising prices due to record-breaking droughts. And as expected, this year we saw olive oil prices double from 2 years ago. And we've also warned about citrus green disease in Florida, hurricane impacts, droughts in Texas and Oklahoma affecting cattle feed, and the Colorado rivers, low levels impacting southwestern agriculture. Now, extreme heat and drought in India have similarly affected rice, corn, soybean, and sugar crops, with a 1% rainfall change causing a 34% output decrease. However, crop failures are just part of the problem. Hoarding during shortages, exacerbated by conflicts like in Ukraine, a major grain exporter, can trigger famine. And as seen in Poland and France, civil unrest can arise due to import issues and subsidy cuts. And these social instabilities, they only worsen food supply problems, extending beyond weather-related issues. So why are these things occurring, and why will they persist? There are 2 factors contributing to worsening conditions. Number 1 is the rust diseases. These are fungal infections that weaken plants, they reduce flower production, and they cause leaf damage and defoliation. And higher humidity rates and stress plants make them more susceptible to fungal outbreaks. And this has impacted coca, bananas, and citrus crops in recent years, to name just 3. The second issue is insect infestations. Now, these pests, they cause up to 40% of growth problems and spread of diseases, costing the global economy over $290 billion annually. Insects, they spread some of these fungal infestations, and insects, they love wet weather. What this does is it forces farmers to spray stronger and stronger pesticides on their crops, which is proving to have long-term health impacts on all of us. And when insects explode in population, they directly eat the plants and they spread infections to the rest of the crops. Now, the third issue is extreme weather events. These are things like your floods, your droughts, and heat waves that damage crops and reduce yields, leading to soil erosion and water scarcity. Whether too much rain prevents farmers from planting their seed potatoes or prevents farmers from bringing in their harvest on time, the unpredictability of it all spells a disaster in the future. The fourth issue is heat stress. This is due to higher temperatures that cause heatflation, where we have smaller harvests due to heat stress, which leads to rising food prices. You don't have to look far to find that extreme weather events drive all of this. As record after record is broken, heat indexes continue to climb and the swings between weather patterns and storms becomes more dramatic. They move out of that agricultural comfort zone, that sweet environmental spot which has allowed us to produce an agricultural abundance. The fifth issue is water scarcity and flooding. Climate change exacerbates water shortages and increases severe storms, negatively impacting agricultural production. Plants, they need water, but they also need it in consistent amounts. And what we're witnessing is many extremes, either too much when it's unnecessary or very little at all. We're also seeing rapid swings between these extremes. Agricultural practices can only buffer these extremes slightly. Why these problems will persist. You can look at any graph or chart these days and see rising temperatures. Global sea temperatures have risen so high that we are literally in uncharted waters. We don't fully understand the implications, but we do know a few things. This results in more moisture in the atmosphere, a warmer atmosphere, and more severe storms when they do come. Not to mention ocean acidification, loss of marine biodiversity, extinction of species, coral bleaching, and the inability of the ocean to sequester harmful greenhouse gases. And while the ocean is a significant carbon sink, absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, the increased levels of CO2 and lower pH, they can affect the ocean's ability to sequester greenhouse gases effectively. Hence, the problem, it only compounds and gets worse by the year. And what we're witnessing is increasing weather inconsistency with more extended periods of extreme conditions and far more dramatic swings. For example, a Texas town recently experienced a temperature drop from 105 degrees to the mid-50s in just one day, accompanied by hail so deep that they had to use snowplows in summer. And while extreme, such events are becoming more common, creating significant challenges for agriculture as crops lack resilience due to reduced genetic diversity. And this isn't a problem that we can just science our way out of either. We can't just simply engineer a new soybean or overnight breed a banana resistant to the fungus threatening it right now. And we can't bioengineer a coca tree that can handle such rapid transitions between severe floods and droughts. We can't simply plant a new region, add more fertilizer to the soil, or regulate the temperature. The problems are going to persist, but there are things that you can do to lessen their impact. A few decades ago, we might have only worried about corn crops failing one year, but we live in a time now where we have to consider the failure of multiple crops in successive years and the total disruption of stable agricultural practices. The Green Revolution, which brought us modern agricultural abundance, may have reached its zenith and is waning into its decline. Current threatened crops. First, realize that olive production is still down. Citrusy greening disease hasn't disappeared, and banana fungus is still rampant. There's a lot that we're continuing to watch. And here are a few of the big suffering crops you're going to hear about soon if you haven't already. Rice. Italy's rice output is projected to continue to decline due to a second consecutive year of drought, threatening the EU supply. In Asia, rice prices hit a 2-year high amid concerns over dry weather and monsoon damage in India, which has halted some rice exports likely to continue into this year. California's severe 2022 drought here in the United States, it halved the rice planting, causing a $703 million loss and 5,300 job cuts, with lingering effects still into this year. In these events, they highlight the vulnerability of rice production to extreme weather, causing significant economic and supply chain disruptions, which are crucial for food security planning. And while one area may recover the following year from a especially down year or drought, the impact on global supply and the instability of the overall crop prices that continue to go up, they fuel a country's hoarding activities and they diminish overall global supply for years to come. Coca. El Nino and climate change have severely impacted West Africa's coca crops, causing extreme weather and a significant rise in coca prices. Intense rains in December of 2023 and droughts in February 2024 have damaged the crops, pushing prices to a record $5,874 per ton. Now, Hershey has warned of potential price spikes, and the International Cocoa Organization reported a significant drop in cocoa arrivals, with prices climbing 60% in just March of this year, surpassing copper prices. And this really highlights the urgent need to monitor food security and market trends due to the broader impact that it's having on the economy. Now look, you may not be too alarmed by low coca production because you may not be a fan of chocolate, but when one crop fell so dramatically, it can have repercussions that impact the trade of many other global crops, from sugar to seed oils. Potatoes and sugar beets. In autumn of 2023, heavy rains across Belgium, France, and the UK waterlogged potato fields, which complicated harvesting and increased spoilage risk. Now, the Netherlands and Belgium, key potato producers, they left much of their crops unharvested by late November, causing European potato prices to hit a 14-year high. Excessive rainfall has also threatened Europe's sugar beet production and delayed winter grain sowing in France. England's record rainfall over the last 18 months has prevented planting staples like potatoes, carrots, and wheat, just highlighting how such conditions can threaten an entire country's agricultural output and future economy. And these events really underscore how extreme weather can disrupt agriculture, leading to shortages, price hikes, and farmers' reluctance to plant vulnerable plants, impacting producers and consumers over extended periods. Corn and soybeans. Heavy rains in southern Brazil have resulted in devastating floods, especially affecting the Rio Grande do Sul, the country's largest soybean and 6th largest corn-producing state, Now, that's in a state of emergency. And this flood, the worst in over the last 80 years, has left dozens dead with nearly 100 people missing and displaced. And the state reports significant crop losses, with maize yields expected to drop by 37% and soybeans by 16%. Approximately 17% of corn and 40% of soybean crops in southern and central Brazil remain unharvested, really complicating loss estimates. And soybeans here in the United States are being planted in May and June for harvest in November. But if the forecasts we see do come true, the crops could suffer as well. Soybeans, they comprise 90% of America's oilseed production, and roughly 70% of all protein animal comes from soybean meal. And the impact ranges from cooking oils to animal feed, impacting food processors and ranchers alike. So if the United States soybean harvest suffers, the world's two top exporters, Brazil and the United States, accounting for a combined $81 billion of exports, or 87% of the global supply, will be offline for a year. 5 solutions. All right, so that's the bad news. What do we do now? 5 solutions really stand out that you can implement today to offset the impact of these inevitable food disruptions over the next decade or longer. The first is simply learn how to cook and cook on a regular basis. If inflation hasn't yet motivated you to cook your own food, or if you're doing so for health reasons or to control the list of unhealthy ingredients going in your body, you might want to start cooking more of your own food to lessen your dependence on a food supply chain failing in slow motion. You might not think of that loaf of bread as an amalgamation of wheat, malted barley, corn syrup, soy lecithin, soybean oil, and sugar, but it is. Manufacturers, they must list all of those ingredients, and any changes to that label or list can take years to implement and to get approved. So when soy lecithin rises in price because of soybean crop failures, or corn syrup prices rise because of corn crop failures, the cost of that bread is going to go up. So will all the other breads, even the ones not made from those specific ingredients. You're far better off when you can cook your own with water, sugar, flour, salt, and yeast. And as I demonstrated in one of our videos, you're now a layer more protected from the supply chain when you know how to pull yeast out of the air with a potato naturally. When you know substitutions for these ingredients, like honey for sugar or another grain for wheat, your independence and self-sufficiency increase even more. I would encourage you to at least start to learn how to cook and put it into practice for yourself for at least 1 meal per day. And you'll eat healthier and save money, but you'll also protect yourself from some of these supply chain disruptions and high prices. I have a whole playlist on cooking, which I'll link to in the comments and description section below. Now, the second thing is you want to expand your diet. If you only eat the same few things, you're missing out on nutrition and narrowly dependent on a supply chain. In the United States, if you take rice, corn, and wheat off the table, you almost eliminate most foods in your grocery store. Instead of allowing yourself to be susceptible to food supply disruptions, I would encourage you to expand your palate to include any of the 21 other grains that we covered in our video, 21 Overlooked Grains, which I'll also link to below. By expanding your palate and bringing more diverse and often overlooked foods to your table, it really insulates you somewhat from global food supply chain disruptions. Now, the third thing is grow something of what you eat, whether that's a backyard or a windowsill garden. Do you have any space for a fruit tree in your yard? Do you have a windowsill garden providing you with fresh herbs and micronutrients? By growing your own food, it really offsets your grocery budget and provides you with more options to turn to when there are periods of food scarcity. But this isn't something that you can just hard pivot to when the grocery aisles are empty. You have to learn to grow and incorporate these into your diet, as it's really a gradual process that takes years to become proficient at, so you might want to start today. Now, your fourth solution is to build a pantry of non-perishable foods. A supply of non-perishable items such as dried beans, rice, canned goods, and other essentials can really offer a safety net during shortages. Known as a working pantry, this method involves regularly using and replenishing items to maintain freshness while having enough to at least last for several months. It's a proactive strategy to guarantee access to vital nutrients and ingredients, even during temporary disruptions in the food supply chain. And your starting point for that is in my video on building a 3-week food supply. That's going to get you through most disasters as well. Now, your fifth solution you can plug in today is to learn to preserve food. By learning food preservation techniques like canning, drying, fermenting, or pickling, these methods they extend the shelf life of your harvested and seasonal purchases, enabling the enjoyment of out-of-season produce while cutting waste and reliance on fresh availability. Think of it as an extension of your cooking skills and working pantry. If you implement all 5 of these solutions in small but meaningful ways, the impact of food supply disruptions on you will be minimal. If you'd like to take things up a notch, be sure to check out our video on building out a one-year food supply pantry, which I'll link to here on the side of the screen. As always, stay safe out there.